What is up, people? It is Dave. It is Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Danish noisemakers, Lifesick.
The band that never sleeps, Dave.
No, they
I
do.
swear to God, I think, like, do they live in Jakob Bredel's studio?
They
Because
just,
it kind of feels like they're always in there. Like, always in there.
yeah, for sure. Like, it's constant. The band's new album, Loved by None, Hated by All, will be released on November 1st via Metal Blade Records.
Sexy.
Lifesick's hometown of Fredericia in Fredericia, I don't know how you pronounce that, in Denmark, was founded
Go harsh. If it's Denmark, go harsh.
Founded in 1650 as a giant fortress at a time when the country was being continually battered by war and defeated by empire after empire. Although the Danish realm is now among the world's most peaceful and prosperous places to live, Lifesick are keen to alert us to the bitter conflict still raging in their hearts and minds. After 3 full lengths of increasing weight and intensity, 2023's Life and Other Lies EP brought the band sobering death metallic hardcore to Metal Blade, where they have come of age with the kaleidoscopic fury and ironclad gloom of Loved by None, Hated by All. Sometimes it feels like the more you give, the more they take, comments the band on the pessimistic title.
And not about the record label. Not about the record label, right?
Yeah.
Just convenient that it's written in there.
Yeah. Over the last couple of years, I've given my all, but we've been knocked down time after time. That's what's inspired me to write this title, and it resonates with most of the songs on the album. It fits perfectly with Lifesick's theme, which is and always will be about the roughness of living in today's world. Lifesick exists as it does because of the world as it is. The song titles tell their own sad stories: Death Wish, Legacy of Misery, Poems for My Funeral, The Morning March. This is funeral doom levels of dejection, dispatched with therapeutically extreme levels of punk aggression and deathly brutality. As with previous platters, the LP was recorded by Jakob Bredel at his Dead Rat facility. He understands our sound and knows how we want to record, notes the band, and he's just easy to work with, which is crucial during a 10-day recording session when pressure and different tempers can arise. This time, Jakob's role expanded beyond our engineering, helping to shape and revise new material before twiddling a single knob. He came down to our rehearsal room where we played all the songs for him live so he could add his touch to each song or edit stuff that we might have been a little blind to from playing the songs too much. This was the first time we did this, and it was very effective. It is definitely not the last time we will do it. Even so, the responsibility for applying Lifesick's monomaniacal momentum to a more sophisticated and immersive sound picture has been shared around more than usual. Mixing was farmed out to Taylor Young at the Pit to give it a different touch or nuance from our previous releases, while the tracks were handed to noise collective John Connor to enhance the album with sound design and samples throughout every song.
From the fucking Terminator. What are we doing here? Have you seen this boy? You know what I mean? What are we doing? See if Robert Patrick comes out of this room and I'm fucking jumping out a window.
To better unify the album, we provided them with all the songs along with the keywords about the lyrical themes and the album artwork. With this information, they created unique, dark, industrial samples that perfectly fit the songs to our vision for the album. The album was then mastered by Brad Boatwright at Audio Siege.
If it ain't broke, don't boatwrite it.
Fuck.
No, we love you, Brad.
Fucking yes. The results ring loud and clear from this tumultuous masterwork of bleak aggro beauty. Okay, so
Right, well, let's pick a bone right away.
oh
with
fuck.
This.
Right, okay.
They just said that this name sums up their existence. Loved by None. I think you'll find Loved by Two in Scotland. Lifesick. Don't discount us. We've been with you for an album and at least an EP.
For sure.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first album was out before we started doing this.
Yeah.
So we did, was it Misanthropy? Was that the
Yes.
first album?
Yep.
And then we did the previous EP,
Yep.
And that EP, can I just say how fucking wrong we were on that? Because that previous EP started with a country song. Oh, we're like country playing
right.
it. We were that. If this is the sound of things to come, then we are interested. And you know what's not on this? An acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Not one fucking note. Not one lick.
Yeah.
I got a feeling that once he finished playing that guitar got smashed over someone. Fucking get rid of it. Sit here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, so loved by 2, maybe hated by the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, I was pretty hyped up about this one, Duncan, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think Lifesick have dropped the ball once, to be honest, with their previous releases. Even if you go back to the early stuff,
They have
601 or Swept
I
to
think they
Black.
have a directness in their sound that is it's really difficult. Well, that's not really difficult. It would be very easy to fuck up and sound tailored, Taylor Younged, but they don't. Like they're I get. They're one of those bands that when I'm listening to them, I feel the fucking rage.
Yeah.
And it is music to break shit to. Like everything they do is music to break shit to. And I do feel like even if I'm like Lifesick are one of those bands that if you're having a bad day, you know, like you shove on at the end of it like that, it could be worse. You know what I mean? Like you literally you feel like it's the audio equivalent of one of those rooms that you pay to just smash things in and then come out feeling all better about yourself. So and they haven't put a foot wrong, and as a result of that, Metal Blade is the reward for that. That's a fucking great label for a band like them to be on. And they probably are of that ilk of kind of Danish bands that kind of circle Jakob Bredel. They're probably one of the ones that has achieved, in terms of record labels, are on one of the bigger ones. And that's, I think, because you listen to it, you get it straight away. Yeah. Like, even if you don't like the music, you get the fucking power behind it. So it's a gift
for sure. Yeah, I think as soon as we heard Misanthropy, I was like, okay, right, these guys are just on an upward trajectory now.
Sounded so accomplished, you know what I mean, already. And part of that's to do with the way it's produced. Like there's no wasted sound. It's harnessed in, so every cymbal hit, every snare crack, every guitar scrape, every vocal like scream has an impact. And what I like is when bands realise that themselves, and even if they move labels, they don't fuck with the formula, because why fuck with it? It's got you this far. I met bands that jump, like, all this stuff has got us here, and now we're on a bigger label, so let's just disregard all that shit, and let's just start taking on suggestions. Let's be crazy with it. No, you got signed because that was your sound, and they've doubled down on it. Like, more than any band, they've doubled down on it. And to me, well, you're going to hear my review, but I think it pays dividends for them every time I listen to them.
So we got the EP. We did the EP in January. Now, what, like 10 months later, we've got another.
Turnaround was quick on this as well, because a couple of months ago, I was sharing videos with you online from Dead Rat Studios going, that Lifesick are in recording again. You were like, yep, they had my album coming out this year. I was like, how do you know this? You were like, I mentioned it at the start of the year. And I still believe that conversation never happened. But yeah, like the turnaround from them being in their 10 days in the studio with Jakob, this coming out is quick, considering we hear of other bands going to the studio and all of that, penciling in for April 2025, and you're like, that's like 10 months away. What are we doing here?
I know.
So
what do we think? What do we think of Loved by None, Hated by All, except Dave Duncan? What did you make?
Except
of
get
this
that
new
brackets
release?
at the end. Like they haven't missed a beat here, and that's the kind of beauty of this. Misanthropy is an album that I do go back to quite often, because it scratches an itch whenever I'm angry. You know what I mean? Like, it really, really does. I'm just like, I need to fucking listen to something to amp me up, or, you know, like just to make me fucking centered or harness my rage. And like, listen to this, it just sounds like like fucking Lifesick have been away in like a 6-week training camp for an MMA fight, like, and then come back and recorded a new album. It's Sims just it's Lifesick but bigger and angrier and snarlier. Snarlier is not a word, but let's use it anyway.
Cool. Yeah, works.
So we could talk about the like sheer metric fucking ton of heavy groove closing riffs this has, which is just they have that like. I think about other kind of bands that exist in this space of that kind of hard. I mean, they're hardcore at their core, but they obviously have a more kind of like the metal, kind of thrashier, like faster element. But I was thinking about this today. Like when I think of bands like Nautilus, and Nautilus have beatdowns, breakdowns, however you want to fucking quantify them for days.
Yeah.
At the end, but there's a formula there.
Yeah.
Right. I listen to Lifesick. I know they're coming up, but like every time, every single one is so unique, so tailored, and just so perfect to the end of every single song. And it's like every time you're just like, you're like, oh, what we're gonna do? You get you're like just a wee pinch, and you're like, that's the fucking one, and then a pinch of high, you're like, oh, just fucking one more. I love it. Like this is breakdowns for fucking days. Like just like that, it is impossible not to snarl your face up to and start banging your head. Like it's like you could like fucking secure my head like this to a wall, and I would still. Life finds a way, Dave. I would find a way. Lifesick finds a way to fucking headbang, man. It's just
true.
It's so fucking good. Right. So let's talk first about the production, because we always like to talk about the production. Crunchy, snarly, punchy, heavy. Is how I would describe this. That drum production is just, it's right in your face, and that snare has all the fucking, like that snare sounds like the sound of like some innocent civilian being caught in a fucking body cam footage get beaten down by a corrupt police officer. It's just fucking. It's like there's techniques in there. I can hear the techniques. You know, it has a bit of the compression, a wee bit of the gate on it, but I actually think it makes it sound even better. It has a snap to it that feels like a punch.
Yeah.
And it's nice and prominent. Sounds fucking huge, and you need that because it underpins at times very, very, very fast guitars. What was interesting about that PR statement, and something I was going to mention, but it's kind of mentioned it for me a little bit. This actually, more than any of the ones, does remind me of Hatesphere, like the way some of the thrashier bits come in.
Yeah.
And then they're saying that they actively, you know, Jakob come in and sat down with the band and helped them smooth out some of those rough edges, or rough out some of those smooth edges. There will be no fucking acoustic guitar in this bastard. Give me your country guitar. But there are bits, even vocally, like there are times here that it reminds me of old school, like circa 2005, 2006 Jakob Bredel. Those thrashy elements I love on here because I mentioned this before, a breakdown, beatdown only sounds heavy if the bit before it is doing something that makes this bit sound, and those kind of thrashier, groovier bits allow the space to open up for something really, really heavy at the end. So love those. Once again, they never appear to run out of ideas for riffs. I fucking love the riffs on this, like all the way right through it. And it just keeps getting like heavier and heavier. Like even when you like just when you even get to the end track, Straight Jacket, and you're like, well, I mean, there's one track left. I wonder what they're gonna do. It's just the heaviest fucking riffs just piled on top of each other. Like one of those like restaurants that you see on Instagram where like the servers carrying like 17 plates, or they're in a beer hall and carrying 42 Stein of beer. And like, how does anyone carry that? Lifesick kind of do that with heavy riffs. They just pile them on top of each other in a Jenga-like capacity where they're never going to fall over. I fucking love it. This, it doesn't stray hugely far from the formula. I kind of like that about them. All they've done is, I think, refined that songwriting. And the techniques I mentioned before, like, so if you listen to, like, the breakdown on, like, the opening track, Death Wish, or even Peace Through Superior Firepower, you have an idea what that sound is. By the time you're up at track 6, Poems for My Funeral, you're getting dun 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 dun. It's just, it sounds nasty. There's, like, intense, fast stuff. Like, Peace Through Superior Firepower has blasts. You know what I mean? Because why the fuck not? Where other tracks will lean more into kind of giving like full-on old school, like hardcore stompy grooves. Liquid Courage is a great example of that, where it starts off, it kind of lulls you into the false security because it starts off with like a dun 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 dun, you like that, and then it instantly just kicks into something rapid. The other thing I love about this is that I think they're a band that know their shelf life in terms of album length. Like nothing these guys have ever done, including their EP, which was relatively short, is long. This one runs about the 35-minute mark, and there ain't a wasted riff, a wasted bit of space here at all. An instrumental track leading into something else. The closest you get to that is Peace Through Superior Firepower has a closing bit which has like a weird kind of industrial loop. They mentioned that they'd worked on those, and it actually really works well at the double cross. And the ending is Straight Jacket, which I kind of feel like is earned because it's so crunchy and so gnarly and gets so discordant that when the kind of almost choir-esque vocals kicking at the end, it's the only bit on the album where you're like, you get a feeling of something. It's fairly fucking relentless all the way through, and those additional elements are cool as fuck. Album artwork here, oh man! Once again, we talk about stuff that would look great in a t-shirt. I love this, like the kind of the idea of crashing waves, carrying a shipwrecked man. But actually, when you start to look a little bit closer, the mist of the waves is actually like fucking like demons coming from them to claim this man's soul. It's cool as fuck. And I love that element about them. Like even like the Lifesick logo wouldn't necessarily sit. You would expect something gnarly or twisty and a wee bit more blackened on it. But like I think it just works. Once again, the attention to detail is all over this. We've been with this band now since 2022? 22, and so we're 2 years into our life cycle of Lifesick, and I genuinely think they're one of the most interesting bands. One in the Danish scene, which is already super fucking interesting for music, and we stress this if you've been asleep under a rock or just this is the first video you've watched by Metal Epidemic. The Danish scene just now is fucking fire, and Lifesick are like up near the top of that. Of just like consistently like just making great fucking heavy music, just abrasive, heavy, in your face, upfront cunt music is absolutely awesome. But the other thing that I kind of love about these guys is they have a sound that I will never tire of. You know what I mean? Like, see if they release another album in 2 years' time, which is just this again. I'm gonna be fucking happy. There's a timeless quality like bands like Slayer have, where like you know what the Slayer sound is and you just want that. You don't want them to, maybe you want them to introduce a wee new metal riff every now and again, but you kind of just want that sound, right? And if they're going to give you that album after album, you're going to be fucking happy because that's the sound you crave. Mentioned Hatesphere before. Hatesphere were a band like that. They kind of started to lose a bit of my interest when they tried to go a little bit too far away from that core sound that they have. Lifesick have a really fucking Moorish, really aggressive, really heavy, very angry core sound. And 2 years into their career, I could be listening to these guys 12 years from now and they could be doing the same thing and I'd be infinitely fucking happy. So, well done, guys. Honestly, you bigger label, fucking excellent sound you've compromised, not a fucking iota of what you've done. And the release of this one, this is fucking savage and it makes me happy. So, Dave, like,
Duncan.
Every now and again, when I'm listening to an album, we talk about this, I'm like, I'm loving this. Davey's really fucking loving this. And this is a kind of Davey's really loving this album. Like, every time there was a slower bit, I'm like that. Dave's just going, fucking. closing the door, like lowering the blinds, getting out the good lube. You know what I mean?
Are out,
yeah. Like this is fucking like ear porn for you. So
yeah, I mean, like these guys just always deliver. Really, like their sound has that like hardcore, metallic hardcore kind of bass to it, but then they always like sprinkle in a little bit of death metal, a little bit of thrash, a bit of power violence at times as well. Sometimes you get something, a little bit more left field, something a touch blackened or like that EP they went for like kind of folky Americana type stuff. And the EP was cool. Like I really liked what they did on that release. That first track was, like totally stripped back and just totally different, and then the other two tracks were just direct and to the point. And it was a good idea. It was it kept things moving. Since
Big Davey doesn't like EPs.
I'm not the biggest fan of EPs, Duncan. And that 11 minutes was just like, need more. So like when I saw this, like 35 minutes, I was like, okay, now we're talking. This is what I want. This is going to satisfy my needs, and it does. Like the all the key components are here. Like this delivers huge on heaviness and just raw power. It goes hard as fuck, like which is exactly what I wanted. But like you said, it's also refined as well and more planned out, I'd say. Whether that's the Bredel effect or not, I'm not sure. But just the way they've kind of shaped these songs and the flow of this album overall just feels more detailed. I think on previous releases they sometimes like jumped fairly quickly from one idea to the next.
Yes.
Without letting it fully like permeate almost. But on this album I felt myself kind of sinking into sections for a touch longer. And you really like feel the weight of those parts before they move on to that next section. And I think that makes certain tracks on this much more memorable than before. Along with that, they also make sure that each track has that like a different feel or a different tempo, so you never get that feeling of like am I still on the same song, or like it's repeating itself. There's plenty of variance on this from a rhythmical point of view, and it just helps kind of distinguish the tracks one from each other. With the exception of Hollow Treats and the closing track, pretty much every song on this finishes with the most disgusting, crushing riff. And it's just
it's not
like,
the same riff either. That's
not.
The thing about it. It's not just like we're going to like do a deathcore drop at the end, which the thing that only differentiates all those is where the bass drum is and what fucking synth sims playing in the background. It's fucking ridiculous.
I love the fact that those moments they do slow them right down and just get super heavy, really filthy sounding, and you never feel like shortchanged by the end of a track. You're just like, yes, that is exactly how that track should have ended. Even when it's like a short track, like Peace Through Superior Firepower or Double Cross, which is like fucking really short.
Under a minute and a half or something.
It still ends in a really satisfying way. I also really liked the addition of the kind of samples and the kind of noise design that they've used on this album. John Connor is a Danish kind of industrial act, and he's collabed with like loads of Danish bands, and had
we've mentioned him before. He's been on something we've reviewed before.
For sure. Like he has he does lots of stuff with guest vocalists as well. He's done stuff with Eyes, with LLNN, Kim from Mole, Cabal, I think, as well. I'm sure Jakob's worked with him in the past as well, but those little like intros or outros on these tracks are a really clever way just to add more of a kind of flow to the album, add that kind of cohesion in.
They don't feel pieced on either. You
No,
know,
they don't.
That's my pet peeve. I've told you about this. Everyone knows about this. My pet peeve is, let's bring in a wee sample or let's close a song out with something that doesn't fucking fit. It's never going to be revisited and doesn't match the album at all. But it's a cool sound.
Yeah.
Or it's a cool sample. So let's just use that.
Yeah. It's used in more of a texture or just something atmospheric, just to elevate the tracks, but it's not overused in the slightest. It's very tastefully done. And this doesn't come off like, this feels more like an industrial release now. It doesn't have that kind of effect on it at all. It's just a really cool way of kind kind of joining up the tracks and adding in a bit more texture to it. This album has like so many highlights. Like, I think I've listened to this, it's only like 34 minutes, so I've listened to this a lot. And I think my favorite track has changed about 4 times over that kind of listening period. I actually think the more I've now listened to this, I think the album actually gets better as it goes on. So most of my favorites, I think, are in the second half of the release. Poems for My Funeral was my initial favorite, just because of how kind of doom-laden it was. It gets ridiculously heavy in the slow parts. Also love Legacy of Misery, which has this really killer, like, kind of 2-step hardcore part, which has a tambourine in the background as well. It wasn't until like the second or third time I was like, there's a fucking tambourine happening in the background there. I was like, what the fuck? But it's awesome, really works. Liquid Courage has just this groove that is an absolute neck breaker. And vocally, there's so many great moments kind of scattered throughout this. I think Simon has delivered one of his best performances to date.
Oh yes.
His tone is just unreal. Like, just that rasp he's got really just adds this level of menace to these tracks. But for me, it's actually all these little kind of nuances that he adds to his style that keeps things fresh on this release. He's constantly changing his register. I think it's Poems for My Funeral. It's a fucking beast vocally, but he goes from like that kind of like drain pipe kind of guttural into this kind of mid-range kind of hardcore, then into this almost like touching on a kind of black metal delivery in the way that he ends some of the words and kind of pushes into a higher register. Lyrically as well, this is fucking ace. There's so many lines that I was like, oh, that's going to have crowds kind of shouting that back at them. That moment on, I think it's Liquid Courage, where they've got that higher highs and lower lows moment, I was like fucking shouting that along with them. I was like, yes, come on, fucking awesome. The last track is, as you said, called Straight Jacket, and it's the one track, where Lifesick kind of push the runtime a little bit more, coming in about 5.5 minutes. But what I loved about it was the fact that they didn't opt for the predictable long, slow burning intro, which I thought when I saw the length, I was like, it's gonna have an intro here, like a acoustic guitar or something like that. I was like, nope, none of that. Fucking let's get right into it, and we're just gonna fucking blast you from the get-go. It's maybe slightly slower overall. The second half of the track gets right into this kind of like slow and kind of sludgy tempo and rhythm, and then it fades into this kind of like churning kind of industrial sound with the samples from John Connor. And it's one of those albums that when it finishes, you will instantly feel like you want to relive it all over again. It's so like satisfying, like 34 minutes, it doesn't feel a second too long. And just there's so many rewarding moments on this album. I think musically and like creatively, this is fucking excellent. But like the newest release from Nails, which this does share some kind of similarities with, there's also an element of this that just elevates the whole thing to another level, and that's the production. Jakob is like, he's quickly becoming like the new Kurt Ballou for me. I just feel like everything he touches is just dynamite. And he's captured the instruments on this album perfectly. Like,
he's clearly passionate about it as well. You do not, like, how many producers do you hear that are going out to rehearsal spaces to sit with bands and work on stuff?
None.
Like, I'm obsessed at the moment with, like, I've fallen into a big deep rabbit hole of kind of music production and kind of like behind the album stuff, where you're watching like you're watching videos on YouTube where like people like Rick Rubin are being interviewed about pivotal moments with the work with artists, or musicians talking about what happened when they, whether it's through Drumeo or whatnot. You're getting perspectives of it. And what I've learned is the ones where I'm like that, the albums that to me are iconic, right? Like they have that sound that just are the ones where the people that have produced it are involved in the process, like are there with the band, like almost the unofficial sixth member or fifth member or whatever, sitting there kind of shaping things, bouncing ideas off and getting things out, because you get the best out of that. And I think what I've said this before, name 2 Jakob Bredel like productions that sound alike.
Yeah.
Can't do it, man.
Yep.
He locks in a band's sound arguably better than anyone that's walking the planet right now, and as a result, it's the below stamp of quality.
Yep.
Like, I know when I get this, I'm pretty much hearing what the band is going to sound like live.
Yep, for sure. Kind of like yourself, like I love kind of digging into the production side of an album. And actually, when I was listening to this, I was thinking I would really love to hear like the raw demos of this album, like before like all the mixing and master and all that stuff, just because I bet it sounds fucking raw as fuck. Like, I'd love to hear what these tracks sounded like before Jakob like kind of started to work on them. That being said, I think having Taylor Young mix this was a genius choice, because the clarity and the depth in the mix of this is brilliant. Like, the end result is just thick and razor sharp and just hugely punchy. The production is just fucking awesome on this. It sounds incredible at like a high volume, which my neighbours can attest to. So production like right across the board from Jakob and Taylor and Brad, like absolutely spot on this one. Yeah. So let's wrap this up. What are we thinking score-wise for Loved by None, Hated by All, except
this is easy for me because we've reviewed them twice already, and both times we've reviewed them, we've given them a 4.5, and this is better than that, so it's 5.
Yeah.
By process of elimination, Dave, I've made it very easy for myself. It's an easy 5.
Yep. I would totally agree. I couldn't find anything to dislike about this album at all. Like, it hits in all the right places, and it leaves you feeling like you want to just play it again. Mm-hmm. I think this is fucking awesome. My favourite release from Lifesick so far. And
we need to see them live. Come on, get 100%. To Scotland. Come on.
Yep. Big Jakob with you. We'll fucking party like it's 1999.
I thought you were going to say, we'll throw him using and I'm like, no, he's jiu-jitsu, remember? He will fucking... And the size of him as well, he'll put us in 2 Kimuras. How does that even work? Watch, find out.
5 from me as well. The new Lifesick album is out on November 1st on Metal Blade Records. Links below to the band, to the pre-order, single, all that sort of stuff. Check it out, have a listen. It's fucking awesome. That is a review. Thank you for checking out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.